This week, Theresa May gave her first address as Prime Minister to the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham, where she spelled out her plans for Brexit and the restoration of British sovereignty back from Brussels. In this heroic speech, she made it very clear that she plans to implement Brexit, trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty that will follow a 2-year negotiated exit from the European Union. She also indicated that Britain would be once again a fully independent sovereign country and would no longer be under the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. This is good news for our nation's ability to fight terrorism and to protect our own borders. She also gave a strong rebuke to her fellow Conservative members of Parliament and peers in the House of Lords who are trying to stop Britain leaving the European Union, and said that they were an insult to the intelligence of the British people and subverting democracy. It has been over 100 days since the British people were given a historic vote on our membership of the European Union back in June, in which the majority voted to leave the European project. It would appear from Theresa May's conference speech that we have the strongest Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher, and someone who is leading from the front and not consulting with pollsters to see what policies are popular, but what is in the best interest of the nation. There will no doubt be challenges ahead from Theresa May's government as she negotiates our exit from the European Union, but to get our sovereignty back is something worth fighting for.
As we start to explain our plan for Brexit, and the country will see that the Conservative Party is united in our determination to deliver that plan. Because even now, some politicians, democratically elected politicians, say that the referendum isn't valid, that we need to have a second vote. Others say they don't like the result, and they'll challenge any attempt to leave the European Union through the courts. Come on. The referendum result was clear. It was legitimate. It was the biggest vote for change this country has ever known. Brexit means Brexit, and we're going to make a success of it.
It's incredible to think that over 100 days have passed since the British people decided to vote against remaining in the European Union, despite what the political commentator was saying, that the Remain camp would win. As a result of the referendum, we've seen the resignation of David Cameron as Prime Minister, together with a real power broker, the Chancellor, George Osborne. At first, I had my doubts over Theresa May's leadership for the top job, primarily because we didn't know much about her, despite her being the Home Secretary. David Cameron's communications advisor, Sir Craig Oliver, said that the Prime Minister's advisor nicknamed Theresa May Submarine May during the referendum campaign because she was always disappearing when asked to speak or give interviews for the Remain campaign. In a very shrewd political manoeuvre, she kept her cards very close to her chest, and it was not until she first formed the campaign that we began to see that she was serious about Brexit by appointing David Davis, Dr. Liam Fox and Boris Johnson to senior positions in the cabinet and to oversee the Brexit negotiations, also known as the Three Brexiteers. Theresa May's first speech to the Conservative Party conference is the clearest indication of the direction that she wants to take the country in post-EU Britain. For those who believe in freedom and democracy and want to see Britain free from Brussels' interference into British life should be pleased. Her first announcement was that she wants Britain to leave the European Court of Justice, and this is good news for our nation's ability to fight against those Islamist terrorists who wish to destroy our way of life. As the European Court of Justice has subverted our ability to confront terrorism, in March of this year, Boris Johnson said in the aftermath of the ISIS terrorist attack on Brussels that EU judges were harming Britain's national security. He said that the European Court of Justice was militating our ability to control our borders and maintain proper surveillance of suspected extremists. Another example of the European Court of Justice interference in the course of British justice was Islamic cleric Abu Qatada, who was granted asylum in the UK despite his alleged conspiracy for involvement in terrorism in Jordan. In the past, he issued fatwas and justified the murder of Muslims and their families if they renounced their faith. He also made a speech in London where he advocated killing Jews. The British government wanted to deport him back to Jordan to face trial, but was denied by the European Court of Justice, saying that his human rights were in danger. Finally, after many years, he was deported, but this point illustrates the problem with the European Court of Justice in that it looks after the welfare of terrorists and their supporters and not the families of victims of terrorism. To leave the European Court of Justice is good news for justice and our ability to fight terrorism. Theresa May also spoke about how the British government will invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty that will start the 2-year negotiated exit out of the European Union. We now have a timetable in place, and that means that Britain will be once again a free and independent nation, the first time in over 40 years. This will not be easy because we know that EU member states such as Germany will want to continue to trade with us because we import so many luxury German cars. The European Commission will also not want to give Britain a favourable trade deal, as they threatened us that we would have to be part of the single market if we want access to European markets. This means that we will not have control over our borders and have to accept a large migration of people from Europe. In addition to this, we'd have to pay the EU for the privilege of doing so, meaning little would change. The nature of the European project is that they would want to make an example of Britain to discourage other EU member states from leaving the European Union, despite the economic benefits to Europe. She gave a strong rebuke to her fellow Conservative members of Parliament and peers in the House of Lords who are trying to stop Britain leaving the European Union, and said that they were an insult to the intelligence of the British people and subverting democracy. Those who advocate that the EU referendum has no legal standing because Parliament has not voted nor passed legislation in both houses miss the point of the referendum result. The EU referendum is the purest form of democracy and offered the British people a vote on our membership of the European Union. Therefore, to go against Brexit is to go against the will of the people, which is politically very dangerous for any individual or political party. God has used this nation historically to prevent the formation of a European superstate. Firstly, over 200 years ago in the Napoleonic Wars and Napoleon's defeat at the hands of the British and the Prussians at the Battle of Waterloo. Then the prevention of German military imperialism from dominating Europe during the First World War. And then the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. Now Britain has dealt a devastating blow to the Brussels bureaucrats who have been actively trying to create a European superstate without the will or the consent of the people of Europe. In concluding, Theresa May has understood the biblical principle in the Bible, in the book of Acts, chapter 17, verse 26, and he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwelling. Theresa May has made a good start to her premiership by recognising that God is sovereign, by seeking to repatriate powers back to the UK from the EU and its institutions. In Britain, leaving the European Union could trigger other European member states to seek their freedom and leave. This would be a deadly blow to the European federalists and their dream of recreating the Tower of Babel.